This is Energy Group Radio, and you're with To Be Fair. I'm Cara, and with me is Jotham, and right now we're joined by Chris Stead from Grab It magazine, who'll be coming on each week to talk to us about the latest indie news, as well as other game-related topics. Now, Chris, last week when we talked to you, you mentioned that you would be playing some cool games.
I was, yeah, and I did. I was pretty blown away. The game that I played using Oculus Rift was Project Cars, which is a crowd-funded car simulator that's due out. It's supposed to be due out in March. I'm not 100% sure, it might get delayed, but I played it in Oculus Rift and I was absolutely blown away.
What about it blew you away?
Well, okay, put it this way, right? When you're sitting in a chair and you got the goggles on and the headphones on, and you're sitting in the cockpit of the car, and you have a crash and your bonnet crumples, you literally lean out the window and then drive that way, so you can see round the bonnet. It's that cool. It's that like being in the actual game.
So they've made it so you actually have to interact with the situation you've got yourself in and lean out around your crashed car.
Well, it's not so much that they've designed it specifically like that, it's that you have the capability to do that. So, I drove around Bathurst, which in itself was awesome, and I was in an open wheeler, and it took me a while to realise that there was no HUD because it was all on the steering wheel, the computer on the steering wheel, and I looked down and realised there's a full holographic thing just right there in front of me, just showing me all my details, which was amazing. You know, you got your mirrors, you look up and down, you look down, you can still see yourself sitting in the cockpit. You look up, you can see the weather, and it's dynamic weather in the game, so you can see if it's getting cloudy or whether the rain's coming or whatever. It's just, and then when you're kind of going into apexes and there's cars all around you, you're right there on the apex, you can totally feel it, and the car physics in the game itself is so good, you can really feel it sliding, and virtual reality is indeed the future.
So it is a crowd-funded game, and so other than the virtual reality, how do you think it compares in its actual construction?
Yeah, top class. I thought I think at the moment Forza Motorsport 5 is probably the best car sim I've played. I know there'll be a lot of Gran Turismo fans out there who will jump up and down, but the reality is that Polyphony just go dead for too long. I thought the last Gran Turismo wasn't as mind-blowing as it could have been. Obviously there's a PS4 version to come, but I think Forza's the king at the moment, and this is going to compete. I think it's going to compete against Forza, especially since it's got Oculus Rift enabled technology. If you've got the capability to play it, and I was playing it with an Xbox One controller on a PC that was rigged up to Oculus. It's worth saying that the visual quality takes a bit of a hit on Oculus. Like next to where I was playing, it was set up on a 4K TV, and it was looking like spec. And then you move into Oculus, and it downgrades to like say PS2 era almost. So you got to cop that, but it's so much more immersive anyway because you're sitting in the game, feeling every turn. It's awesome.
So you feel that the downgrade in the visual aspect is way outweighed by the fact that the reality is so immersive?
Yeah, totally. I mean, graphics are cool, but everyone knows gameplay beats graphics any day of the week.
On that note, I mean, my friends and myself have gone back to playing older games such as Gauntlet and the remakes of Gauntlet on Steam. And as much as we love the old school feel to it, I mean, we're quite upset that the game doesn't go that long anymore.
Well, look at the best-selling game probably. I'd say it's probably the best-selling game of the last couple of years, not including mobile stuff, is Minecraft. You know, and we all know what the visuals of that game are like. So gameplay always wins.
Now, last week you mentioned other than Project Cars, you were going to be able to play some other games.
The Dark Souls was there as well, the next gen version. I think it's called Sins of the Scholar or something. Sorry, I can't remember the exact name now. It's got a bit of a subtitle to it, but basically it's Dark Souls 2 on next gen. And look, it's still not like the world's prettiest game, but it's sharper for sure. And still deadly. Still deadly. I spawned at a campsite. I just picked up someone else's random game and like made it 10 steps and got killed. But yeah, that's the way the game goes.
Yeah, I absolutely loved when I saw their original campaign and for their first one that had, on all their posters, prepare to die. And you're seeing that, you go, wow, that's a way to sell your game. People don't particularly always go for that kind of challenge.
Yeah, I actually I went over to Dubai and played the game there with the creator, and he's just a sadistic bastard. He just he just sits there and just absolutely laughing his face off every time he watched a journo die, because there was like arrows in the back, crushed by balls, just dudes jumping out of corners he couldn't see. He just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. So the guy takes great pleasure in finding ways to kill you, which is to our benefit, really.
Oh, it makes me think of there is a web-based version of a Mario-esque side-scrolling platform game where basically, as you're playing through, you every single time you do something, some random thing will happen, like a rock falls out of the sky, and basically you have to end up playing the game over and over and over and just learn the pattern of events before you actually get a chance to get through it. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen that one, but I think it's quite clear that challenging games are coming back in a big way. And even like Flappy Bird, which was a huge mainstream success, was super hard. But like everyone was playing it. And so the whole idea of making games easier was to make them more accessible, so more people would be into gaming. But the reality is that there's a lot of really hard games that are selling phenomenal amounts to people who aren't gamers. So I don't know. I think a better way of saying is that if people are more interested in completing stories now, because the story quality is so good, so that games don't become as challenging, or at least story-driven games don't become as challenging, because they will you on to the end. They want you to finish the end. I think it's some crazy percent, like 12 or 20% of people never finish games.
I can say I'm honestly one of those people. I've only ever really finished 5 games in all of my gaming life.
If it completely finishes in 100% or got to the end of the story?
I mean, completely to the end, all of the story and that.
You're crazy, man. There's so many good stories. You know what? The only thing that developers generally stuff up is final encounters are rarely thrilling. Sometimes you just get there and it's all over and you're like, And because, back in the day, we always used to live for the final boss, and then the final boss in a lot of games isn't that good, but you can kind of understand from their perspective, it's not worth putting all this budget into the back end of games, because only like 10, 15, 20% of the gamers are going to even get there and see it. So it's a hard one for developers, but you do need that good ending. You really do.
Yeah, it definitely feels that if developers were to put the extra money into the end of the game, into that final boss, that more people would end up playing to the end of a game?
Right, through word of mouth. Yeah. Or would more people just go onto YouTube and watch it? Okay, that was really mean-spirited.
No, I think you do. I do think you have a point there. I mean, most of the games that I've ended up playing or ended up finishing is the ones I've heard from friends through word of mouth. For a free-to-play game that I can think of, Warframe, which was one that I don't think a lot of people had heard about in my friend circle until I was the one that did the word of mouth. I came across it when it just came out about 3 years ago on Steam and downloaded it thinking, oh, awesome, cool, space ninjas, sure, why not? And within half an hour of playing the game, I was on Mumble with my friends and telling my gaming friends, you guys have to get this game for free-to-play. It's incredible. 3 years down the track now, and we've gone back to it and logging into it, so many things have changed about it, but within 20 seconds of logging into the game, most of my friends that I still play with saw me log in and went, oh yeah, cool, you're playing Warframe, I'll jump in on that.
It's interesting you say that about how much it's changed, because one of the big things, I guess, that's been debated a lot amongst, journalists at the very least, is that it's very hard to play games in their original form now. I mean, like, we've got Majora's Mask is coming out next week. It's they've changed, they've tweaked the gameplay. It's the same game, but they've tweaked the gameplay, and you still can't. It's not its original form, and things are always getting evolved. Like my Mass Effect 3, I haven't completed it yet, but I also haven't patched it. So I've still got the original ending that everyone blew up over, and I'm waiting to experience it for myself before I patch it. But a lot of things now, they're auto patched and they're auto driven, or they're like they just download while you're asleep and patch games for you, and it's a bit of a shame, really, because your understanding of what Warframe is will be completely different to the next person, just because that original version probably doesn't exist anymore or isn't accessible.
Basically, that is what happened with Warframe for me. When I tried to access it, it no longer worked on my computer, and I did have to re-download the whole thing, and it had changed just so much when I logged in. But luckily, I can say that, the game itself didn't change that much. I jumped into the game, jumped into a level, and I instantly knew what it was that I was meant to be doing. I knew where I was going and the objective and all that. It was more things outside of the level, so the menu UI and the way that you actually did things, or the extras that came along with it, had changed. And while I don't like the new menu system compared to the original one, I can understand why they changed it, and I can sit and go, well, the game itself is the same. The way it plays, the way it feels when playing it is the same, so I can just get over that.
But when we talk about word of mouth and how many games are now sold on word of mouth, especially in the mobile scene, I think 60% of apps are sold on word of mouth or Facebook shares or things like that. Your original word of mouth guarantee on the game, is it still valid by the time that person gets to play the game? It's kind of difficult, especially in the reviewing space when, you can review games like there would have been a lot of reviews of SimCity, for example, which would have just given it 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 because it was so broken at launch and you couldn't play it. Where now, you can play it, and they've introduced an offline mode and all this type of stuff. So those reviews are still there forever, and people very rarely re-review. And they're on Metacritic, and they're there to stay on the internet forever.
Yeah.
Scarring a game. I guess it talks a lot about getting it right first time. Probably why we're seeing Steam Early Access and these things take off so well, because from a developer's point of view, it's not unprofessional. What's the word? It's not the best decision, I guess, from an editorial standpoint to review a Steam Early Access game or a game in beta or a game in soft launch, because you're not really reviewing the final product. But at the same time, people have got to put money into these things. They've generally got to pay for it, so they deserve to be reviewed. But I think a lot of developers are getting around terrible early scores, like what's the one Ubisoft just released, the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot.
Oh, is this the one where you've got your own little castle or kingdom and it's floating around in space, and you have friends who have theirs, and you can basically go and attack other people's castles to steal loot from them while they can attack yours?
Yes, and that's just come out of beta, and that's been in beta for 18 months easy. They just announced it, I just got an email 2 days ago saying, we're happy to announce we're officially launching this game as of now. And they've added so much content. If you did a review now versus a review 18 months ago, the score change would be 3 or 4, which is makes or breaks a game,
I was actually told about this one through word of mouth, and I haven't had a chance to actually get onto it, but I imagine now that it's actually being released and it was in beta for 18 months, that it'll be completely different, just as we were saying just a bit earlier. So just quickly before we finish up, is there anything else this week that you wanted to talk about?
Well, we'll have to quickly talk about one other virtual reality thing just before I go. There's an Aussie guy, and his name's Ryan Alcock, and he's making this game called Super Mega Brothers. It's a cylindrical platformer, and it was at the EB Games Expo and also down at PAX Australia this year, or last year, sorry. And if you see him at any of the shows, you've got to try out his game. It's Oculus Rift, and it's like Mario Brothers, except you can see the entire level from any point. And so you're with, it's like the whole level's been folded like a piece of paper, and you're in the middle, so you can look all the way down, all the way up, and even back and forwards, and then you platform through it. And it's super old school retro graphics, but the concept is amazing, and it just feels awesome. And you don't even aim; you just look at enemies and press the trigger, and it shoots. So there's some really exciting stuff happening in virtual reality.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Chris.
No worries at all. Bye.
That was Chris Stead from Grab It Magazine. He'll be joining us each week to talk about the latest in the indie news and gaming scenes. So if you'd like to find out a bit more about Grab It Magazine itself, we'll put a link up on our Facebook page and our Twitter, which is at TBFRadio with 2 E's. You can also find the last and first interview that we did with Chris on our YouTube channel, which is also under the name To Be Fair, if you'd like to find out a bit more about him and his past. Now, let's get back to the music.